Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to another Kaizen Central on Zanut TV. Warm greetings to everybody on the call, and hello to anybody who's watching via the YouTube live stream. I would like to suggest, because we actually never get round to doing this, I want everybody to have a bit of a shout out about some of the positives of the last week or two. Clients you've served well, customers, deals you've won, staff training that has gone particularly well, anything that says, you know what, I've had a great couple of weeks. Who'd like to start, please? Adam, I know you've, oh yes, hello, who's there? It's Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hi there. Yes, the technology is actually working for me tonight. Last Thursday was so frustrating. Audio, video, yeah, I had every issue. So it was a challenge. But yeah, no, we've had a really sort of positive couple of weeks on both sides of our business. So on smart manufacture, we've had quite a few new inquiries coming through from manufacturing companies that are looking at basically just looking at how they're doing things at the moment and realizing that if they're going to, you know, continue to survive in whatever the new world is going to bring, they've got to do things differently. So reviewing their processes, looking at how cloud-based software can support their business. So we've had new inquiries. We've equally had companies come back to us that we've probably spoken to some months ago that were a little bit anxious about, you know, how secure is my data going to be in the cloud? Is it really something that I want to step into? That I've now seen other businesses who've been faring better than they have because they've, you know, been doing things differently. So they've come back in touch. In terms of business signed, on our other side of the business, because we're also involved not only with manufacturers but with other sectors with helping principally SMEs implement ISO standards. We signed a couple of fairly big ISO projects with two companies based locally to us for a change in Bristol, wanting us to help them implement ISO 9001, 14001, 45001. So those are two big projects. And then finally, we're very close to signing a company that's a fencing manufacturing company that's been looking at their e-commerce strategy, but also looking at going down the road with ERP software. They are a business that have suddenly seen about 500% growth over the last few months because people are now deciding to do home improvements, look at their garden. So they can't cope at the moment without putting systems in. So we're talking to them about two of our platforms, and hopefully they're going to be signing up very soon. So yeah,
hold that thought. Hold that thought about the e-commerce thing you just mentioned. I want to bring that up in a minute. Okay. But anybody else got something they want to shout about? Something that's floated their boat or somebody else's boat? Adam.
As you know, I've just, as I said earlier, I just finished delivering LinkedIn sales training to 45 people globally just prior to this meeting. It's all done online, all done via the wonderful internet that it is. I've also been doing the strategy for a manufacturing business, taking it from 650,000 to 3 million turnover, the focus in the next 3 years. So we're doing the implementations, the actions and the strategy around that. What else? The Factory IQ, which was Schedule Plus, our operations management software, that has had some fantastic impact with a 10 million turnover manufacturing business in reducing their lead times and increasing their productivity. And that's all utilizing data and where to focus and what to do with business improvement and performance, and also scheduling and all that. And I've just created some new products and services. So that's what I've been doing.
Hey, anybody else got something you want to shout about? Mr. Barr.
Hey, I can't resist. So the last week or two has actually been really good for us. Very encouraging that we've, after 2 years being in business as Edge Digital Manufacturing, trying to do what it says on the tin, we've acquired and started work with our largest company by a country mile. That's been really good. So the things we do help organizations to get their heads around digital technologies. But what's really encouraging is that in these larger organizations, it's as much about people as it is in the smaller companies. And then nobody's really surprised about that, are they? But we spent so much time working with small and medium-sized companies that it was easy just to assume that larger companies have got it all sussed. But people still need help to make progress with businesses wherever they are. Business leaders, like people on this call, yeah, we all need help. We all need coaching. We all need friends, and that relationship approach to what otherwise is deep technology is really making a difference. That's great. Felt very comfortable there.
Well, that's fantastic. Nice one. Okay, any more? Yay, Rista Hagen up there in Rochdale. How are you, sir?
Very good indeed, thank you. We've done extremely well. Exactly what's been said is large companies can't adapt very quickly, where small companies can adapt immediately, certainly when the owner, such as myself, wants to take it on rapidly. So we've just won the IEMA award for a transition on energy and carbon reduction, beating all the professionals and all the large companies in the UK. To that extent, exactly what's been said is the interior, exterior, home improvement has gone absolutely mental. Is people working from home and now buying the kitchens and bedrooms and bathrooms to the extent that we were a 3 to 5 day company turnaround, and we've always been able to cope with that at 2 or 3 million turnover. We're now at 3 weeks. We can't cope. That's one of the difficulties of manufacturing. Is as a distributor, you just buy twice as much. As a manufacturer, we've got a fixed amount of machinery and people that are skilled, and we can't double turnover overnight. We're trying to ramp up as fast as we can to get that back down to about a week's turnaround. But the pleasure that we've got is this has never, ever, in the 25 years I've been trading, had this opportunity. And it's the opportunity now that as an SME company, we're having to adopt the digital even faster to understand our efficiencies and understand how we now need to manage with online sales, with MRP, which was the sort of the realm of the very big companies. It's now SMEs that need to be able to get straight through the digital supply chain to be able to ensure that we can grow at the speed now we need to grow. So I think for the manufacturers, yes, 20% are absolutely over the moon about COVID-19 and what it's causing, people in technology. And yes, 20% of the fossil fuel people, they're absolutely struggling. There is a lot of issues. The gig economy completely disappeared. Musicians, artists struggling. It's how do we adapt? And I think this is what is absolutely brilliant. What Nick does is by bringing it to us every single week is to get that sort of bite of where we're up to and what we're going to do. So well done, Nick.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Okay. 5, 4, 3.
Can I just say one small thing?
Yes, of course.
I was going to do the interrogation thing and just wait until you got down to 1 and then anyway, just to highlight the point that Richard was just talking about, as I think a number of people know, I work predominantly in healthcare, mainly in data. And 5 years ago, our biggest competitor was clients who thought they could do what we do themselves. And in the last 8 months, we've had 6 of the world's top 15 major pharmaceutical companies come to us and say, you know, that thing you were talking about before, we tried to do it, but it's not quite working the way we wanted it to. Can you give us a hand? You know, it's like slap forehead and carry on the conversation. So it's not just manufacturing companies where the big guys don't know what they're doing. The big pharma and healthcare outfits equally. I mean, one of the big pharma companies has reorganized 4 times in the last 3 years. Can't get anything done.
Yeah. Okay, sclerosis sets in even the largest, well, particularly in the largest companies.
Particularly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to move it on. Today, as I said in my email to you all, I was hoping to have somebody from Santander in to talk about their trade barometer, because it actually threw up a whole heap of very, very interesting stuff. Last minute, they couldn't do it. They are coming next week. I've got a promise on that. But I thought anyway, what I would do is just pick out some of the very core points, because it leads on to what Sarah was talking about about e-commerce and all sorts of things. That's possibly a bit small, but these are the things that manufacturers are worried about as a result of coronavirus. Can you read that or not? Lack of customer demand, supply chain disruption, labor challenges, lack of customer demand, inability to attend global or domestic face-to-face events, rethinking your business model, finding reliable suppliers, review risk and exposure to a particular supplier, rethinking your supply chain and exploring reshoring, onshoring, nearshoring opportunities, digital transformation. That's 15% challenge. These are challenges. Access to finance. That's really interesting. That Santander must be burning at that, because only 15% regard it as a challenge. Or maybe they like it. Maybe the Santander are giving them lots of dosh. Finding reliable logistics providers and need to divert products to different delivery channels from in-store to online, which brings us to opportunities from the coronavirus. Digital transformation and new opportunities arising from increased use of digital technologies, product solutions, rethinking supply chain and resilience, creating new products, creating new customer base, new markets, reaching new global markets, expanding operations via diversifying from your current sectors or rebalancing the split of your portfolio. Final one. For those who said digital transformation, the focus of their new strategy, well, that speaks for itself. I'm sure you can read that. Marketplace and sales and logistics. So the reason I picked that out, even though we'll be discussing the wider ramifications of the trade barometer next week, was because this week's manufacturing profile, a profile bots, a company imbued that makes they make storage solutions for workshops, factories. You know, they're one of the bigger companies. They do about 140 million a year. Originally a German company, started 70, 80 years ago, in the UK since 75. And they also convert fleets of maintenance vans. So yeah, they'll take a load of Ford Transits and they'll build all the racking systems and all that. But the piece of the market they were missing and couldn't make any money out of was the tradesman, the sole trader market. And so I'm sorry that Ben's not with us this week. Sam, you know Ben, of course you know Ben, from the Value Engine. He devised for them an online back end and front end, and they had a big data team working on this, a digital team, and they turned it from almost nothing business into over £1 million in about 6 months. And you know, I know it's obvious that e-commerce is part of the digital landscape, but so often we focus on operations, OT, and back office. When the sales thing from that Santander survey, but a lot of people see, 57% I think it was, see using digital channels to get to market as a priority, as part of their digital transformation. So Sarah, I just wanted to say that absolutely endorses what you were saying in your hooray for me spot. And I'm wondering if anybody else has got any thoughts. Stephen, can I actually put you on the spot? Because, you know, obviously Edge Digital Marketing, you know, you're working with Made Smarter, you're doing a heck of a lot of work with a lot of companies. How much of what you talk to companies about actually does involve the e-commerce side of it, as opposed to the sort of the operational management?
I would say an enormous amount of it. In a sense, what else are people going to do in these lockdown times? Can't meet our customers as much as we would want, although that's getting slightly easier. So e-commerce is kind of the big hope for a number of the organizations I'm working with at the moment. But also innovative ways. Let's not lose sight of that technologies can help in other ways. So virtual reality. So we've got a couple of organizations who are very interested, and one has made progress with a virtual showroom for what they do, and another one very interested to learn from them. So there are other aspects as well. But to your point about e-commerce, in a sense, that's becoming it's becoming the norm, I think, with a number of organizations that you perhaps you wouldn't have expected to get this way. It's not necessarily going to make an immediate colossal difference. But what it does is sort of get them on the map, I suppose, in an easier way for their customers. So generally, this is combined not just as an e-portal, an ordering portal, a buying portal, but also the whole marketing piece on social media that goes with that. So channels, digital channels, driving people to digital sales portals. So we're seeing that as increasingly, if not commonplace, then at least normal thinking. Be interesting to see how many others are seeing that actually happening in manufacturing companies.
Sam, I know that the Connex portal obviously is not an e-commerce portal per se, but as I say, you do work quite closely with Ben at the Value Engine, and I'm just wondering if the e-commerce issue has raised its head with any of your members in the Southwest and elsewhere in the UK.
It would be useful. I mean, yeah, I was having a good look through that link when you sent it earlier on today, and I picked out some slightly different things from it's not the kind of e-commerce side, but I'm gonna put something out to my portal and my connections over the next few days to see if there is anything that we can do to assist on that e-commerce side of things. Because it's a conversation starter. I think it's something that needs to be discussed and see if we can link things in. As you said, Connex wasn't set up in that way primarily, but there's no reason why we can't help those connections and see where we kind of go from there. Yeah, as you say, it's a shame Ben isn't here because he would have absolutely loved to talk about all the stuff he did with Bot. I guess we can share his link somewhere at some point and give him a bit of a plug.
Sure. Yeah, Adam.
I've worked with a number of businesses, as Stephen was saying, is that you've got the digital, like you say, the internal digital setup and then the external digital strategy as well. And everything that we do from a customer value point of view or a customer value journey point of view, we should be taking the customer down that next step. So the digital strategy is all around from social media, is bringing them into somewhere or directing them into the internet to a website. Then you could have a configurator. I've worked with a number of businesses that have got configurators that that they do online, configure the product that they want, and then it's ordered through there. There's a number of manufacturers that do that. So if you can adapt it, yeah, I've worked with a company that did access panels. Fabrication access panels. So they're, create the design, create the size, tell them what they want, what the hinges, what the door locks, what the vents and things like that. It's all done through the configurator. Bang, done. That's digital. Yeah. But the directing into it it's the digital strategy of getting it directly into it as well. So that as Stephen was saying, that social media and everything, it's always that customer journey. So there's loads you can do, loads.
Barry, you export globally at Playdale. To what extent do you use your website as more than a sort of showroom, if you like, or a showcase? Do your customers interact in the way that Adam just suggested, configuration, that sort of thing on the website?
Not on the website, no, but we do have a behind back office type product. So we use Box and all of our distributors. So we've just signed our 40th distributor this week for Estonia, and they're inducted. They receive a video on how to use Playdale Box, as we call it, and that's our cloud hosting, if you like. So for any data sheets and images and PR and all of that, it just syncs and just keeps up to date. And it took us several years to get there, but once we've got it, you can't deal without it.
Absolutely. Oi, that's Sarah. That obviously resonates because you're in the business of providing services like that as well. You're finding an increasing appetite, obviously, for companies who are looking to obviously protect their sales or increase them and find new markets.
Yes, both in terms of new companies, but also companies that maybe have dipped their toes already with a website. A lot of them have got sort of as a brochureware site, and but then obviously want to move to e-commerce. Some companies, the platform that we're specifically involved in, has a lot of personalization and customization attributes. So for those companies that have got maybe more of a generic e-commerce site, the ability to do more personalization, certainly, and also the ability to sort of integrate with ERP software, because this particular fencing company I was mentioning earlier, the challenges they've had, particularly with eBay, and they've turned eBay off, was because there was no integration with their inventory management. They were obviously making sales, but then the stock wasn't there. So yeah, I think the whole integration piece is really key as well.
And Tristan, am I correct in thinking you also work with companies on their web presence?
Yeah.
Are some of these tales sounding familiar?
They are. I mean, that's what we sort of talk about with many businesses, is that sort of sense of probably calling it a configurator is e-commerce without the checkout. It's going back into a sales conversation, and it's all about configuration. Now, I just wanted to pick up on a point that Adam made, I think maybe in last time I was speaking to before, is it's much easier to open a sales conversation than it is to close it. So you've got that 70% of the conversation. If you're missing out on starting that conversation online while people are doing that stuff, you're missing out, you're reducing that option to then get into the close of the sale. So just to connect those two of things, I thought that comes up.
In the US, over 25% of car sales start online. Nearly 5% of them are completed completely online. And in the case of Tesla, over 70% of their cars are purchased entirely online without the customer ever having sat in one.
And then some of them are driven online, so you miss any physical interaction.
Yeah. In 2018, the numbers that came out, 82% of Tesla, whichever one, not the version 3, the other one, had not actually test driven the car when they placed the order.
Okay, Richard Hagan, how did you buy your Tesla? Did you sit in it before you drove it?
I knew other people who had got a Tesla, but when this model, S model, P100D Ludicrous with perforated leather seats, it's awesome. It's the best one they ever made in 2017. It was worth 137,000. I bought it for 70,000, and I'll sell it for that in 10 years' time. It will do 1 million miles. It will last 66 years. It is a classic. I got 2 speeding tickets within 2 weeks, though.
I have yet to ask you this question, because you've mentioned this dang car several times to me. Why is it called ludicrous?
It's as fast as a Formula 1 racing car, 0 to 60. Formula 1 racing cars are about 1.7 to 2.7 0 to 60. This is 2.3. So it keeps up with most cars. I've driven Lamborghinis, I've driven all sorts of crazy cars in the past. This car is ludicrous. It's not drivable. I thought I could drive after driving crazy cars. This car is beyond my physical capability to actually handle it properly and bang it around the roads. It's not good enough. It's scary.
It's not a supermarket car.
They've changed the whole market of how you sell, because in 2017 it's had every single month updates. It's then had a £5,000 update to be the latest computer on it. But it means for the next 5-10 years, I'm looking forward to version 10 software. So I've got the karaoke as the Model 3s have got. It's free updates. They've changed what cars are about. So no longer is it every 3 years you get your new lease. It's going to be a car for life. And my car, if I pay the 3,900, will become the taxi. So I will be able to make money for it to, if the government in January allow it, it can drive from here to somebody else's house to pick them up. It's crazy what's happening with technology. And this is what's good to be in manufacturing, is we're at the leading edge and able to make those fast decisions and bring innovation to the marketplace. And it's a case of us innovating during COVID-19. I'm chasing as fast as I can antiviral material. I did one post on LinkedIn and I've got 4 big companies chasing me saying, when's it available? And it's all about this, how do we change ourselves, which is exactly the same as what the Treasurer said. Every single industry, every single person, we need to adapt. And I think as manufacturers, we're the best at adapting because we're the innovators of society. And yeah, I'm enjoying it at the moment.
And that's the thing that Richard's just said there is the key there is how do you change yourself? It's yourself. It's you that has to change. So if you're in a position of strategic side to change the strategy, you've got to become somebody else. You've got to change. It's how you become somebody else to achieve it.
I just wanted to pick up one point on Tesla. The game changer for me actually happened a few years ago. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. That told me that the world was never going to be the same again. You remember how many American companies and European car companies have product recalls because there's a defect and they're forced to bring something. Everybody's got to take their car to the dealer and have it fixed. Tesla had a problem because I think it was in California, but somewhere the cars were bottoming out because the suspension was too low. Rather than have a recall, they just sent a firmware update, and that was the point at which I thought, you could argue as much as you like whether you like the look of them or whether you think they look like overgrown milk floats. Sorry, Richard, but the fact of the matter is that the world has changed, and it's changed because people saw in advance of others, i.e. Musk and others, the possibilities of digital. To me, it's terribly exciting. Alec, I was talking to Barry about exporting a minute ago. You do quite a bit of exporting, working with other companies in other countries. To what extent do you use the web as a medium for explaining your product, and maybe configuring and selling it?
We're kind of one of the most unusual companies in the country, in that our website's designed not to tell you anything about what we do. We don't want to stimulate a demand that we can't fulfill, because other people will step in and do that. So we are dealing direct with the people we want to deal with. So it's a point of contact. It's no more than that. And so it's a delicate balance between what we can share and what we want to share. Most of the people at our website are competitors trying to fish for information, and we don't want to help them.
That's interesting.
And the people we're dealing direct with, we have more than enough interest right now without actually trying to sell anything. So that's where we're at the moment. So the internet, we are using digital. We've been doing IoT since the 90s. We just didn't call it IoT then. So we capture data. We are working with Siemens as a partner on a project to create the first auto-tuning digital rice mill, where we'll take live data from the machines in the mill, reconfigure the machines in real time to maximize the performance. And the value that data will create is way more than the machinery's worth. So we will become a data company eventually if we can solve all the problems over who owns the data. And our biggest market's China. But apart from that, it's all wonderful. And we're developing a augmented reality system so we can commission machines remotely when we can't physically get there. Excuse me. So that's how we're using digital, but not for selling. No.
Fascinating. Yeah, you don't want other people. Yeah, there is a thing, isn't there? If you've got a unique product, the last thing you want is others to be able to sniff around it too closely. Fascinating stuff. Talking about digital twinning and virtual augmented reality, I lifted something out of the news show this week. GKN Wheels in Telford put out this extraordinarily bombastic video. It just made me laugh. It was so silly. It was like Hollywood. It was sort of, I expected the Rock, Dwayne Johnson to come out and present. Utterly ridiculous. But what was fascinating about it was that they made a virtue, buried deep, 3/4 of the way through the video, of the fact they digitally twinned this new factory in order to get it right before they built it. And I thought that was worth highlighting. So I clipped that out and used that as a particular post on LinkedIn and Twitter, because I think digital twinning is such an incredible technology. I'd like to ask the question of whoever can answer it. How large does a company have to be before it can deploy digital twinning? Or is size not an issue? It's more the application that determines whether you use it or not.
I could jump in there again. Like, we're using digital twins, but not in the way you see it. And we had an interesting conversation with Siemens, who see it exactly the way you see it. They want to make a digital twin of the factory that makes our machines so that we can make our machines more effectively. And yet the value is not in making the machines more effectively. That's marginal compared to the gain of our digital twinning technology, being able to manage the machine and its production environment. The value it can deliver there far outweighs the value of saving a few 5–10% in the actual manufacture of the machines. And I think sometimes everybody's a bit pigeonholed over, energy savings are in the manufacture of the machine, the operation of a factory, whereas the design of the product, if you put more effort into designing the product for its long-term performance, there's much more gain to be had from that than just saving a few quid by changing LED light bulbs. But I have to say there's more money available from the government for the light bulbs than there are for designing the products.
Fair point. Roy, at Airbus Space and Defence, do you use digital twinning for your satellites and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's my new job since July, is implementing a full end-to-end digital design, manufacturing and services system for defence and space, but we're doing it across the whole business. I mean, the question of size, I don't think it's an issue of size. I think it's about what you're going to use the data for. It's a little bit like Alex said, he's using it to improve the product. We find the use of a digital twin, because if we don't have a digital twin, we have to provide an enormous amount of electronic paperwork to the customer to tell them what their product is and where it's come from and how it's been built and who built it and are they qualified to do it and are all the parts qualified and certified, etc., etc. So what we use it for, or what we're aiming to use it for, it's an aspiration at the moment, not an actuality, is that effectively we deliver the physical product to the customer and its digital twin, and that is our delivery to them. So, and you can guess where the value is. The knowing what the product is as important as physically owning the product. So I think it's more, you've got to focus on what are you making the digital twin for.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, the only time I've ever seen it in actual operation was at Siemens Congleton. I mean, it's a fabulous place because it's so cramped, given that it's hemmed in on all sides by a river and a housing estate and so on. So they have to be very canny about the way they use their space. And I saw them. They demonstrated to us how they use digital twinning to create more efficient production cells. And that's the only time I've seen it in operation. So I really don't have a very clear grasp of at what point a manufacturer would say, you know what, I think now, I mean, Alec, you're obviously in it already, but at what point do I need to start seeing all this in the virtual world before I make the product or before I design my factory or whatever?
I think Roy had a good point in that there's no point in doing it just for the sake of doing it. There has to be value. And sometimes identifying the value can be quite tricky. I would say in terms of digitalization of CAD, everything I build in a computer works. It's only the ones I make in real life that don't work. So it doesn't always solve all the problems. So it can be quite frustrating. So that's a challenge.
Ever the optimist, Alan. Sorry,
Nick. I think the tipping point is around complexity, which is a relative term rather than absolute. I think so. The ones I've seen, like BMW Mini, for example, which is fairly famous for its digital twin, that was because they needed to get the maximum out of a very constrained factory space. So they needed to try out different scenarios, and the digital twin is there to help them with rescheduling. But I've worked for smaller companies where that's also something they're looking into, because control is a relatively complex thing. So how do you remotely monitor a system and control that optimally. So it's about getting the feedback of information, but also then feeding the control back into the machine. So, Internet of Things and sensors is an alternative in some cases to, a fully fledged digital twin. But I think that it can work on many sizes of organizations, so long as what they're getting value out of with their customers is the ability to more precisely control the machinery.
I think that that word value, and we've discussed this before, about the extent to which some companies are wary, leery, whatever word you want to use, of a lot of what we talk about, because they maybe in the past they've been burned by people selling them, too large systems or software that didn't do what they said on the tin, but actually identifying the value. And I suspect, and those of you who are in the business of delivering these solutions, Sarah and so on, I'm just wondering if it's nowadays, because things are relatively more iterative, or capable of being more iterative and bite-sized and small and lower cost, particularly with software as a service kicking in, whether that is making it easier to make the value argument.
Yeah, definitely. I think quite a few companies have had their fingers burnt quite badly, and therefore they're quite reticent to start with. But I think the evolutionary model, and we talk to certainly not manufacturing companies, to say, look, these may be your requirements today. Sometimes they're just looking at the inventory management piece, and then they're looking at scheduling going forward. But I think what we always sort of talk to companies about is, don't just look at platforms meet your requirements today, because you're going to be investing not just the money in the software, but obviously all your time to bring your company forward with that technology, that you're looking at, at having a platform that can scale with you. But I think it's also really important in terms of, it's not just the technology, it's about the processes, the technology. And I know we talk a lot about the people side, but you've got to bring everybody on board with those projects. I think there've been quite a few examples we've seen where it's been, one person implementing some software, and then everybody sort of using that software, then that person goes, and then suddenly there's a lack of knowledge and education, and then that system falls over for them.
So who else has got some thoughts? We've got about 20 minutes or so left. Anybody want to raise another topic? Unless you don't think that we've exhausted that one, the e-commerce and digital. But somebody please raise an issue if you.
I just wanted to say that in the digital twinning world is also apparent in healthcare, where pharma companies are now doing digital clinical trials. Because clinical trials are unbelievably expensive, and they're doing in silico digital clinical trials as a means of improving the design of the final real clinical trial in humans. So I find it fascinating to hear the conversation about what's going on in the manufacturing world, and that's being again reflected in what is an almost entirely process-driven environment.
That is interesting. How can you have a digital twin of a clinical trial? I mean,
you put in all of the. It's a huge Bayesian model where you put in all of the probabilities of all of the different things that people do and the different reactions that they have. So, you've got a 52-year-old female. What's the probability that she's going to have an adverse event reaction, and which adverse event is it going to be, and and then you run the simulations of this new drug that has this effect, and given all of the other things that you're able to predict whether it'll be a good or bad design, and so on. A lot of what they're doing is they're including and excluding factors that they need to have as part of the recruitment criteria for the patients going into the trial.
It'll be rather like Alex's situation, where the digital trials will be a great success, but all the people die.
Oh, absolutely. Well, actually, I mean, I've actually seen that done, where because in all product development, if you're going to kill a product, you want to kill it early, right? And the same, of course, is true in drugs. And they run digital clinical trials, and they identify that there's going to be a death rate of more than 8% or something, and they just immediately say, you know what, forget it. Let's just can the whole thing. It's not going to happen.
That's reassuring.
Yeah, it's I mean, what you just described is, we call it model-based systems engineering, and
exactly.
We just put all the parameters in, and what would normally have taken us 3 months to do in a serial fashion, we're actually playing with it real time in 3D and getting the results. And you push it in one way and it bulges somewhere else, and the results immediately.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, now who didn't have an opportunity and wants to have an opportunity to shout out about some of the success they've had? Angela, I know you did your 300 miles, but I think we celebrated that the other day, didn't we?
Yes, we did, yeah.
Anybody else got some success stories they want to share?
I'll have a quick shout out, if that's all right.
Sure.
So I don't know if anyone else was part of the digitalizing manufacturing conference this week.
Yeah.
Very interesting listening to that and hearing the kind of conversation points and what was going on. And for me personally, because I've only been doing this new business of mine for the last 3 or 4 months during lockdown, as you do, it was quite nice. I mean, it was frustrating, but it was nice to hear about the challenges and hear that, what I'm developing with Connex could be a possible solution to some of these challenges that manufacturing companies are facing, and connecting them with innovative products and getting things to market quicker and being able to test them and help with the kind of reshoring process and building local supply chains and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, as I say, it was nice to know that there's a potential market for it. It was frustrating that I couldn't really talk about it, because obviously it was a conference that we were just listening in on, and that was that. But it was nice to know there's a problem. And then I did a networking session towards the end of the second day with the guys from Siemens, and they'd heard about what I was doing and were kind of aware of it, which was also quite nice.
Well, that's fantastic.
A small little business starting down in Cornwall.
Well, it's the, I think for some time, and I'm pretty optimistic and what's the word I'm looking for? Enthusiastic kind of bloke, and I love collaboration. I always feel that collaboration will win out every time against bare knuckle, red in tooth and claw competition. I mean, competition is obviously vital in terms of keeping standards up, quality up, prices keen, but collaboration is just fantastic. And Sam, you're pulling together, you're enabling, you're giving a platform for companies to cooperate much more closely, and I think that can only be to the benefit of the sector as a whole. So good luck with that all round. Interesting to see how it all rolls out. Nice to know that you've created something and that there is indeed a problem that you are there to solve. It's I must admit, when we started this, we thought, you're always jumping into the dark, aren't you? It's nice to know that somebody's down there with a safety net. Okay, anybody? Stephen, we haven't heard from you tonight. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. I've not been. I've been sort of not particularly active for a couple of weeks. But one of the things that came to mind listening to everybody tonight, I think everybody, to my mind, seems to be engaged in best practice. So there's not. We haven't got half a dozen participants on the end saying, we don't know what we're doing with these digital things. We're quite happy with the hammer and chisel here. What do you want a lathe for? So, I mean, what I'm listening to is incredibly interesting. But unfortunately, what occurred during the week with the old track and trace system and Excel, I'm afraid that is closer to my routine experience working with people than the best practice is talked about. So very much I see almost a two-speed digitization of the UK. I see the people who are embracing good practices, even if they're going quite slowly, at least they're sort of embracing them and implementing. But I see so many people just clinging on to Excel, which is like the binding twine of manufacturing. I mean, for example, with FMEA, I sell a program and I work with people for failure modes and effects analysis. Okay, something, if you do a good job of it, it can save you money hand over fist. Yet from a recent survey I looked at, and this was an international survey out of no reason. Most people pockle together something in Excel, which is okay. It does a job, but what you end up with there is all your hidden costs. What you actually end up with is paying IT people to maintain something that doesn't really work properly. So it's almost the challenge that I routinely have. A little bit of a conversation on Facebook this week is almost trying to get people, look, these are the hidden costs. If you don't do this, you will have an extra person working on continuous improvement instead of fixing your Excel spreadsheet every time a security update comes through. And that is the sort of thing that happens. So I suppose, to my mind, getting the digital challenge out there and understood is a big challenge. And I find, I think that's a collective challenge as well as, to me, being a personal challenge, saying, don't do it in Excel. Spend $5,000 on this, and you'll create a person. So that's as a personal challenge I see, that communication and clarification, but also within the UK, I see that as our challenge. You've got to see it as a challenge. It's no good being brought down by it, but particularly with SME, it's a real problem, challenge.
Particularly so. I mean, it does feel in another context. This was a conversation we had. Adam kindly hosts a Twitter networking event every Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock called #Manufacturing Hour. And it's great because in what we're doing on here now on Zoom, we do a similar thing every Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock. So do check in on Twitter, #Manufacturing Hour. And quite apart from me learning for the first time what the word POCL was, and Stephen's just used it again, spelled POCLE. I was talking about, some of you may have read that article I did on LinkedIn about, does anyone know you're there, about the invisibility of manufacturing. And the fact of the matter is, I did an interview with Graham Cooper, who some of you may know from AGFA. He's up in Leeds, and he was part of the Leeds Manufacturing Alliance. Absolutely cracking thing, manufacturers getting together, exactly as I had said in the article, more need to do. And he said they've been working for 3 years and people still don't know in Leeds that manufacturing exists. It's almost like, and I'm relating that back to what you said, Stephen, about the digitalization argument. It's almost like you can shout about it till you're blue in the face, and yet the message doesn't seem to percolate through. It's like, to me, the argument about digitalization and the campaign and whatever you like to call it, it's tantamount to going up to manufacturers and saying, this is how we can show you, we can deliver you progress, competitiveness, profit. We can show you how to do that. And here it is. This is, we'll come and help you do it. And they just stare at you blankly. So, Stephen, I don't know whether you experience the same feeling, but it feels frustrating that people are not just receptive enough to the message.
I could sort of add a point to that, is that like about almost 10 years or so ago, when I started off on this, in my naivety, I thought I would pop along to the local chamber of commerce, and I had some friends who knew some networking and stuff like that. So I thought I'll just pop along and probably meet some manufacturers, but and see, you know, basically my market was working with SMEs and seeing. Don't stop nodding, Adam. I'm. But the point was is that quite simply, manufacturers just do not come out to play. They just do not come out, and they do not chew the fat. They don't come out, and they don't sit down and say, what about this, mate? Oh, that's interesting. I'm not going to do it. Well, I'm giving it a go, mate. You know, the sort of thing that like marketing and salespeople seem to do all the time. To get manufacturing people almost just to come out and people who were like part of the local business community. I mean, even to the point that I would say to one of my friends who was a director of a very good local manufacturing shop, that he was struggling with a couple of things. And I says, look, I'm not busy. I'll come down and do something for nothing for you. You know, your quality manager just needs a bit of help, and he probably needs to learn how to run, how to do a Pareto in Excel or something. You know, it's only going to take me an hour. I'm just happy to come down and do it for you. You know, the only thing I ask for something like that is if you need one of the products that I sell, at least give me a chance to pitch. That's the only thing I ask for, you know. And even then he said, look, I can't do that because like the director would go mad or something. You know, it is there again, obviously there are some people who are just superb, you know, but it's that continuous challenge of getting this positive message out there, and getting people at least to start. Well, yeah, digitization is not an option. You're either going to do it or you're going to fail.
Again, coming back to right back to your question around digitization and manufacturers taking on board digitization. The tendency we have within sales is to sell a benefit. That's not what a person's after. Somebody is after a solution to something that is hurting them. So we have to change the message. So the message, media, market around that, and that's some of the problem I see is we sell benefits, and that's not what I'm after. Oh, this digital can do this, and this. But the person maybe well, can you actually solve that for me? And that's what's missing. It needs to be solution driven. It needs to be what is the pain.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. That's a very timely thing to add. I just want to because we've only got. I just want to go to Richard, Barry, Alec, and Roy as the guys, the makers on the call. Is what Steve just said correct? That manufacturers do not get round the table and chew the fat and discuss best practice. You're kind of fairly lone wolves. Look at him getting nods from Richard.
Yeah, Made Smarter 2 years ago was launched to give £20 million out. They've absolutely struggled to be able to converse with manufacturers to give them money. They've had to then reorganize. Instead of giving them money, is give them a huge array of options. And even then, they've struggled. Now they've got there. Now they've got so many offers and they've got so much of a network. They are now being successful, and it's going to finish next March. But at the initial onset, manufacturers just sort of are in the little cave. We understand what we need and we don't want to talk to anybody. So absolutely, I concur with Simon, is manufacturing people are incredibly strange people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all very
go to Scotland. Sorry, Roy, go on.
No, it's all very insular, isn't it? And you know, I'm seen to be unusual in Airbus because I actually talk to people outside the business, and I get a lot of people asking me, well, why'd you do that? You know, what's the point? What do you get from it? And it's a struggle to explain to them, you know, that it doesn't cost me that much, and it gives me loads of ideas. And oh right, okay, yeah. So do you want to get involved? Well, no, not really. And I don't know, it's a personality trait of engineers, I think, that they only like talking about what they've done when it's 100% perfect and it's finished. And if you know engineering, Nothing's ever fixed, and nothing is 100% perfect.
And when you make
It's
yours,
not broken. You
fire them into space.
But coming back to your point, Nick, and why I think I view this as almost existential, as it were, is that it's 10% of GDP. Yeah,
and the rest.
Yeah,
and the rest.
so that's and it's leverage, and I understand from the latest Oxford review that 1% improvement in manufacturing gives something like 2.5% increase in GDP in not just the people that need to be fed, but the people providing expert services that are unique to manufacturing, whether it's experts in metallurgy or experts in any sort of analysis techniques and stuff that are the little labs that support. So from a point of view of being something that's gives people interesting jobs, I just view it as crucial, because and getting the message out in some way that I think somehow our sort of our channels are not very coordinated, because unfortunately we have to talk to politicians, but there's other people as well we need to influence, and that's like sixth formers, parents.
The thing I was going to add on to that was, and it's something that I looked at within Santander, because what I tend to do is when I get a report like that is I flick through relatively quick and see what catches my eye very, very quickly. And the one thing in the Santander thing that I picked up was a word: bureaucracy. It was on every single chart. And it was one of those things that, having been a manufacturer, still a manufacturer, having exec from that point of view, bureaucracy is a killer, and it does turn people off. And even at a service level now, where if I go in, so like MGP, the Manufacturing Growth Program in Coventry, was probably one of the lowest areas, yet it's probably one of the most affluent for manufacturing side. They struggled like hell. I was actually dealing with manufacturers that turn around and say, yeah, I can't be bothered with that paperwork. I'd rather spend the hours on I need to in growing the business and doing that than filling in that bloody paperwork to save me X amount of pound. And that's some of the stuff with it. And so that's the bureaucracy side is, and there might be, or there also is probably a big assumption around bureaucracy with things as well that they switch off with, because they've possibly been burnt in the past. But that is the one thing that I did notice in Santander. It was up in the top 1 to 3 all the time.
Yeah, one of the guys in one of the breakout sessions was talking about that. He said, "I'm not sure. The word bureaucracy is such a negative. It's a real." And he said, "I prefer to think of it in terms of compliance." And when you like so many things, if you can change the word you use, it can change your attitude towards something. And I think compliance. Every day people are you're complying with some standard or another. So just think of it in those terms. We're coming to the end. Barry, are you a lone wolf when it comes to manufacturing? Do you chat to other manufacturers?
Yeah, we do, and I think asking people on this, you're all actively engaged individuals. But we're lucky in Cumbria. Well, it was only yesterday morning actually. We had the Cumbria Lean Forum, so there's 15 manufacturers that meet regularly, and even held a great virtual session yesterday. So we do, but I don't just think it's manufacturing. I agree with what you said about engineers, but it's not just manufacturing that are quite interested. We're quite lazy as a UK culture of going out there and gaining knowledge. It's the people go out and gain it as long as it's before 5:05. I've said that before. It's we're British. We're lazy. We've all got a little bit carrying a bit too much, and it's a developed society, isn't it? And we think we convince ourselves we're going to win the World Cup every 4 years. I keep saying it. We believe in our own greatness, and we're going to get caught on the hop if we don't go out there and develop.
Just open the playgrounds and make children fitter more quickly.
Yeah.
Well, quite so. Well, listen, the witching hour is upon us. It's 7 o'clock, and Mrs. P is cooking something delicious in the kitchen because it's wafting through to my dining room studio. So I'm going to say thank you very much indeed, everybody. I'd like to put out a little challenge. I love the community we're growing tonight, and I know some people couldn't make it. Ram sent apologies, and a couple of other people sent apologies, including Ben, Sam. But I wonder if we could if you could invite somebody to join you next week. I'd like to just grow it, and what I'm also going to start doing is developing topic meetings, getting somebody in to talk, because I love as I say, the community we're growing. But I want to try and focus our conversations and have somebody along, maybe one of you, but to present and challenge and develop some real conversation around particular issues, operations, IT. Sales, whatever you like. So I'll write something about that tomorrow or Monday. And but as I say, if you could bring somebody else along, it'd be great. I'd like to grow the family, so to speak. So on that hopefully optimistic note, I'll say thank you very much indeed, everybody. Really appreciate having you with us, and take care. Oh, and by the way, follow Mark. Mark, I'm sorry we didn't hear from you today, but follow Mark on LinkedIn, because every week Mark has a terrific news roundup, and it's great to share, and it's got every single top story in manufacturing in the UK in it. So it's well worth signing up for. All you've got to do is follow him on LinkedIn, and it comes out on a Friday morning. Is that right, Mark?
It is, yeah, and there's always too much good news to fit into a single LinkedIn post, so there's some positivity for you.
All right, well, thank you very much again, everybody. Bless your hearts. See you next week.